take these 2 layer cake squares and turn them into 2 8-inch pinwheel squares. How are we going to do it? You are going to love this. First, take whichever square you want, and we're going to fold it wrong sides together. So you're going to have the pretty part facing out, and we're going to press along here. And then you're going to come back and you're going to fold it over one more time. Think napkin, think bandana, and fold again and press. On the next piece, you're going to do right sides together, which is hard to see on a white on white, but right sides together and press, fold just like a napkin again and press. What you're going to get from that is 2 neatly pressed, they almost look like handkerchiefs, of fabric. And from here, you're going to fold one open. And similar to the one, a video I have on YouTube showing the charm pack version, you will have seam lines, which are going to be your guide when you go to stitch. So if you'll notice, we're going to put our wrong sides up because we obviously need to face right sides together. So the wrong side up one goes first, and then we're going to match it. So you see how this is going to nest perfectly. So if you look here, this kind of comes up in a peak, this comes up in a peak, this comes up in a peak, and this is a valley, and this is a peak. So they all match perfectly. Now, because of the press lines, you want to make sure your squares are lined up, and then you are going to pin. So while we do this, let me talk about our next steps. Next steps are going to be to, it doesn't matter which way your pins go, obviously. Next steps are going to be to stitch 1/4 inch along each side of the press lines. So we're going to stitch along here and stitch along here. Okay, so let's go over to the machine and do that. Okay, we are back at the machine. As you can see, we have the item I just pinned. What we're going to do is line it up on our presser foot along the seam line. So your presser foot goes right, the edge of it, if you're using a 1/4 inch presser foot, goes right on the edge of that line, and you're just going to follow it through. Now when you're working with the peak side, we'll call it, you do want to kind of just press it down so you get a flat surface, but you can still see the line. What's great about this is you don't have to mark anything. We're going to cut through those lines, so you don't have to worry about press marks, and everything keeps crisp and neat. And as you can see, because we pinned it, nothing is moving around on us. All right, so we're going to trim the seams, and then what we're going to do in our next step is we are going to turn it around and do that same thing on the other side. So you'll see here, here's our first seam line. It's pretty hard to see on the white on white. You can see it through here. I just thought that showing on the print would be too distracting. So you can see it here, just like that. And now we're going to start on this side again. And as you get more comfortable, you'll be able to go faster. And this really is one of the fastest ways to make half square triangles for pinwheels and such. I mean, you get 8 out of this 10-inch square. Okay, so I'm going to do the last 2, and then we're going to head back over to the cutting board, and I'm going to show you why they call it a magic 8 square. All right, here we are. We just finished our block. You can see the stitch lines along here. You can take your pins out now. I'd say this bad boy is pretty secure. So what we're going to do to start is we're going to take our long ruler, and we are going to go, you notice I have my rotating mat out again. I'm going to line 1/4 inch up off the seam. The other thing you can also do is go point to point, and we are going to trim. Just take your rotary cutter, straight edge, 45-degree line, rotate it around, do the same exact thing on the other stitch side. I always like to measure 1/4 inch from one seam because I know I'm at least giving that amount, and I kind of eyeball it to make sure the other side isn't getting slighted. Do that. Now you're saying we only have 4 pieces. This is where the magic 8 part comes in. Lining up the seam points, that's the easiest way to do it, is seam point, and then make sure you're square on the sides. Square, square, seam point through. You're basically cutting the block in half at this point. And we're going to do that. I mean, you are cutting it in half. And then one last one. Again, point, point. You can see why the rotating mat is so important, because if you're trying, do not move these pieces. Either you physically move this mat or stand on the edge of the table, because you're never going to get them to line up again perfectly. So I highly recommend a rotating mat, or again, corner of a table. Okay, you guys ready? Here's what you get. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 half square triangles that look like this. How exciting is that? Let's go press them open to the dark side, and I will show you how to square them up and make them super pretty. Okay, now that we have our half square triangles done, as you can see here, they might look a little funky because whenever you use a pre-cut or anything to make a half square triangle, they're not always 100% perfect when they come out. That's where a little square ruler comes into play, or any ruler with a 45-degree line will work just fine for you. Or if you don't have a 45-degree line, you can always make things work. If you notice, I brought out my little rotating mat, but right here is a 45-degree line. So you match it up along there, you can still square it off because you can see these lines are going to match up, and we can do it that way. I highly, 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 highly recommend a rotating mat for this, only because you get a more accurate cut. It's highly worth the investment. Now, not everybody has one, not everybody wants one, but one thing you can do then is you can take your main mat, just set it on the corner of your table. I'll do that sometimes when I don't feel like getting this out or it's in use, and you move on one side, and then you can turn to the edge of your table and do the other side. Easy peasy. You become the rotation, not the mat. So what we're going to do is we're going to line up. There's a 45-degree line right here on this one as well. Going to line up that 45-degree, and we want 4.5-inch blocks. So as you can see, this is just a little wonky stretch of fabric, different, maybe you weren't perfect in cutting your 10-inch squares, but we can fix it. So line that 45 right up on the seam. Make sure you line your straight edges, and we're going to get rid of this little excess here. Nice thing about it is you get a bonus. You don't have to trim your dog ears because you're already doing it. Sometimes on the edge, when it's just barely any fabric, it'll fray like that. So now notice I'm holding the ruler so I don't lose anything with it. And then we're going to get this side as well. Just like that. And now to double check our other sides, what we're going to do is we're going to rotate it again. But this time we're going to slide the ruler down, and we're going to get that 4.5-inch line. So 1, 2, 3, 4.5. I always cut, measure twice, cut once. See, this is what happens when you lose your line. Okay, in we go, roundabout, and then we can come over here, get this one little edge here, and voila, we now have our 4.5-inch block. So only a bunch more of these to go, but it will make your seams line up much more appropriately when you go in here to nest and everything. You won't have overages, and see, now they're all uniform in shape. Okay, now that we have our 8 half square triangles, I'm going to show you how to arrange them so you get your final block, and then we'll head over to the machine and I'll show you how to stitch the final block. So first things first, we got to remember it will never be, it'll be white print, white print, white print, white print. So start off this way, and if you go rotational wise, clockwise, then you're going to have another just like this. And if you always think that the color should make an L and you're just rotating it around, then you will keep your mind right on your pinwheel. See, just like that. And now we can go stitch it, and when we get back, this is what our block will look like. How exciting is that? You get 2 of those, and we're going to make 7 total for the quilt. Now that we have 4 half square triangles made, we're going to put them together in a pinwheel. So to start, you're going to line them up like so. So you're never going to be stitching a light colored or your white to your pattern. And as I mentioned before, if you press to the dark side, these seams will always nest. Just like this, you can see they're going to match perfectly, and you can nest them together and click them in. Now we want to make sure our squares are all lined up, and then we are just going to do a 1/4 inch seam. And when I show you this, you can see that boom, and now you have your 1/4 inch there, so they will match. So let's do it one more time with the bottom pieces. Turn it up, and one more time. You may notice I keep switching my thread scissors. It's just that I happen to have a few pairs and I just grab whatever's closest at the moment. All right, let's go press these open and then we'll put the final 4 together. Okay, here's something I want to show you real quick. So here's this one, and you can see that there's the 1/4 inch seam allowance. And this one, the same way, has that 1/4 inch seam allowance for the point. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you come in here. Again, we're going to nest our seams. And the beauty about doing a pinwheel where you have one side being white and the other being a print is if you always press to the dark side, you will pretty much always match your seams. I can't guarantee when you go to put the blocks all together they're going to all match, but in this process to get the matching blocks they will. So now we're just going to start a 1/4 inch seam. If you feel more comfortable, you can pin them, excuse me. You just always want to make sure you are matched up and you are nested. You should be good to go. Sometimes you have to autocorrect. It's okay. You don't have to do everything in a full sprint. In fact, slow and steady wins the race. There's plenty of people out there who have unfinished quilt tops that will tell you the exact same thing. Now, you nest your seams and you follow this practice, you will have a perfect matching pinwheel every time. And look at that. Can't get much better than that. So, let me know how it goes. But look at how cute this block is. Only 8 more to go. Or 7 more. 6 more? 7.